12-core AMD Ryzen 8050 Zen 5 Strix .82 has been spotted. GeForce RTX 4060 Ti 16 gigs ends up slower than 8 gigs in official MSI testing. AMD Radeon RX 7800 and the 7700 pricing and time spy scores gets leaked.
This is Tech Track.
So firstly, we have from Milky Way at home. Basically, they just reported this, and in the computer 996435, whatever that computer is, that's the information that we got. Is that the CPU type there? We can see that it's the authentic AMD engineering sample, and the number of processor we're looking at is 24, and the family is 26 and model 32 stepping O. That kind of suggesting that it's from the Strix AMD Strix .80 we're looking at here, as video cards have rumored line up the specs here. As you can tell, the Phoenix Point, Strix Point, this is the leak that we got from the Milky Way at home, and as you can see right here is the Strix Point 2024 release. Of course, the AMD Ryzen 8050, that's gonna be the processor we're looking at, is the 12-core processor. There are two possibilities we're looking at. The first one is the 4 times Zen 5 plus 8 times Zen 5C. There will be two SKUs, one module, basically like a multi-chip module type. Well, not the GPU, of course, the CPU we're talking about. Or it could be 8 Zen 5 and 4 Zen 5C cores we're looking at. So that's the only possibility. There's two possibilities. And also, according to video cards here, we're looking at the GPU cores are 16 CU RDNA 3.5. So I'm guessing that's the 3.5, meaning it's a refresh of the RDNA 3. That's another interesting thing we're looking at. The Ryzen AI core gets bumped up to 20 TOPS, and the default TDP we're looking at is 28 to 54 watts. So the baseline got reduced, but the maximum remains the same. So yeah, there you have it, the first leak for the Strix Point APUs here. Next up, we have a Tech Power Up article here on the RTX 4060 Ti 16 gigs. They're showing slower performance. Well, not crazy slow, just a small bit of slow compared to the 8 gigs model, which is not really a good thing because there shouldn't be any performance decrease in any way. But then again, 16 gigs should have more VRAM, meaning that it would having less problem with the games with that has high VRAM usage. So let's look into it, shall we? So as you can see here, that the Cyberpunk 2077, this is the MSI testing, official testing from MSI basically, and they're testing the RTX 4060 Ti Gaming X Slim 16 gigs model. And for the Cyberpunk 2077 Ultra RT enabled, we're looking at for the 4060 Ti 8 gigs getting 91.4, and that's the average, of course, and the 4060 Ti getting 90.56. So a little bit loss in performance, which is very strange. Shouldn't have, like, it doesn't make sense why that would be the case. But yeah, there's a slight performance loss, which again, that could be a marginal error, but in every single game we're looking at, it's kind of a weird thing that's going on. I don't know if it's a testing issue or not, but it happens in other games too, like F1 2023, Ultra RT enabled. We have 103 on the 8 gigs model and 101 in the 16 gigs model. So yeah, there's a slight issue with that. Probably with the silicon, that could be the case. Same goes for the Rainbow Six Siege. We're looking at 387 on average for the 8 gigs and the 383 for the 16 gigs. And next up, we're looking at for CSGO, we're having 1419. In this case, obviously, there's a good one for the 16 gigs model here. Even though the settings here is auto, which I don't really get why it's auto settings, but either way, 419 for the 8 gigs model, and there's a success 445 for the 16 gigs model. But I don't think there should have been any performance difference. I think that testing is kind of wrong. The only reason I'm saying it's wrong because it is not a VRAM restricting game, so it shouldn't be a problem for CSGO here. For Fortnite, we're looking at epic RT settings, of course. It's 100 to 110, that's fluctuating, and for 4060 Ti is approximately 100. So there's a kind of a gap here, maybe like a 10% gap, which again shouldn't have this kind of difference here. This one is the biggest difference in my opinion. In Hogwarts Legacy, they're using the Ultra DLSS and frame generation enabled, and they're still, and well, in this case 4060 Ti 8 gigs is similar. So again, for Fortnite, this is something weird. For CSGO, I believe this is not right, and for these 3 games, it's a marginal error, but there shouldn't be any. But then again, there could be silicon problem or silicon, there's a thing called silicon lottery, so that would be the case. Next up, we have something huge. This is coming from Harukaze. 5719, the Twitter leaker, and well, it is a huge leak apparently, because if you look closely here, well then the RX 7800 and the 7700 that has been leaked already, which in my previous video you can look into it, I've discussed about it, but now we have more information for the RX 7800, which is, as you can see, for the 3D Mark x5 GPU score, it's getting 18,957, which means that it is on par with the RTX 4070. I'm saying on par because it's not a huge gap here, like a 950. Yes, that's the only gap we're looking at compared to the RX 7800. The RTX 4070 is not that much slower. So I'm guessing the RX 7800 will perform just like the RTX 4070. That's the rasterization. We don't know about the ray tracing, of course. But if you look into the RX 6800 XT, that's also very much closer to the 7800. So yeah, it kind of tells you that it's going to perform just like the RX 6800 XT, the RX 7800, of course, and it is a bit faster, good enough, faster than the RX 6800. So in terms of reaching a success compared to the 6800, RX 7800 got that success, because as you can tell, RX 6800 got only 16,352. So yeah, there's quite a big gap there, 2050 I should say, 2500-ish gap. I'm looking at that score. So obviously the RX 7800 is winning here compared to the RX 6800, but it's on par with the RTX 4070. So I kind of guessed that it would perform like the RTX 4070 or around 4070 Ti or in the middle, but it seems like it's going to be performing just like the RTX 4070 or the RX 6800 XT. As for RX 7700, we already talked about it. It's going to be performing just like the 6800 because it's pretty close. So yeah, that kind of tells you a lot of things. Also, another leak from All the Watts, that's a previous leaker for the RX 7700, he or she just leaked this information here, that the RX 7700, as you can tell, is the 449. That's the pricing we are looking at, which that was my speculation. It will be around $400 to $450, and I think AMD is kind of going for the highest pricing here, which is $449. Hopefully that will go down though, hopefully, because we've seen this trend before that when AMD prices something, it always just goes down. As for the RX 7900 XTX or even XT, they went down quite below, so I'm hoping the RX 7700 in a month or two is going to go down a bit. But as for now, the opening pricing, again, this is a rumor, but could be that RX 7700 will be the 449 USDs and the RX 7800 will be far for 549. For a perspective, let's look into the RTX 4070's MSRP here. As you can tell, is 599 USDs. So obviously RX 7800 going for 549 kind of makes sense because they perform just like the same as the RTX 4070. So if that is the case, 549, I think that kind of makes sense because that's a $600 card. This one is a $550 card, so $50 gap here, which we've seen this before from AMD, that they do this. They price it a bit like $50 less so that it gets more competition, more coverage, whatever that is. But I'm guessing the ray tracing performance won't be the best because we've seen this already. So RX 7800 will be performing just like the RTX 4070, $50 cheaper than the RTX 4070. So, or even RX 7800 could be even better than the RTX 4070 because in 3D Mark it's leading. But then again, 3D Mark is not everything. So we still need to take this as a grain of salt here. And then again, it's a rumor, so even more grain of salt. So remember, RTX 4070 and RX 7800 will be performing similar, and the RX 7700 will be performing like this RX 6800. That would be my guess according to these scores.